Evening, everyone. Welcome to the Marin Energy Authority Board meeting for Thursday, September 5th. Welcome, members of the public. Hope everyone's having a good summer so far. Why don't we start in with item 1, board announcements. Doesn't look like we have any. Item 2 is public open time on items not on the agenda. Bob, welcome.
Hi, Bob Spofford from Sustainable San Rafael. Normally I'm here with some happy news and support for the board, but I got to tell you, a large part of the environmental community, the sustainables, the advocacy group for MEA is very, very disappointed and frankly damn mad at the total lack of support from this board for the ballast areas of the Greenpoint Solar Project. We either support local distributed renewable energy in Marin, or we don't. We can't just support it as long as nobody objects, because somebody will always object. If somebody senior from this board or even from the staff had come to that meeting at the supervisors on August 6th and made the case for why this was a perfect example of the kind of project MEA is trying to encourage, the reason we wrote the feed-in tariff, it would have made a difference. That thing went down by 1 vote, and the objections were tissue thin. The Planning Commission had heard them, the Planning Commission had rejected them. The objections from Audubon were laughable, and the rest of it was just plain old-fashioned NIMBYism with no more depth than that. People who live 3 miles away from the project saying, I don't want to have to look at it. Our understanding is the ballast areas are going to reapply. I don't know that for a fact, but that's my understanding. I certainly hope if we do, the board will sit down and really look at themselves and say, are we in this game or not? Are we here to support renewable energy or not? You know, this is supposedly the board that fought PG&E tooth and nail at great political and financial risk to create this thing. And to now let a bunch of NIMBYs from a corner of Nevada shoot down a critical cornerstone project for this agency, to us, is just unacceptable. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Bob. We appreciate your comments. This being public open time, we're not in a position to comment directly to you at this time, but we certainly hear your remarks and appreciate your input. Any other members of the public who would like to be heard on items not on the agenda? Doesn't look like any. So item 3, report from executive officer. Oh, yes. And if you could let us know who you are.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Collins. I'm from Fairfax, and I actually came out on this exact issue that Bob spoke of. I was really surprised. I had seen emails come around asking for support for the solar project, and I assumed very wrongly that that the board of supervisors would really be behind it for all the reasons that Bob stated. And I actually talked the next day to the Greenpoint nursery people, and you know, unfortunately they said that they felt that MEA, although they had stated the report, were very timid and really stepping up to the plate to support that. And I also think that it's important, although I'm not addressing the board of supervisors, that we really understand that some people in the environmental community seem to not be seeing the entire picture here. And you know, I just have to say that I'm from Alaska, and I hadn't looked at Google Maps for a long time. And as many of you sitting in this room really know, there's hardly anything left of glaciers there in the middle of the summer. And so that to me just made it more pronounced that this vote at the Board of Supervisors just went down in flames. I was shocked. And anyway, I just came to try to catch up and understand what was going on and what was the real cause of this. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking out. Any other members of the public? Okay, let's turn to item 3, report from Executive Officer Don.
Great. I just have a couple of items this evening. I just wanted to remind folks that we have a TechCom meeting, technical committee meeting coming up on Monday at 9 a.m. We have a couple of interesting items on that agenda, so we encourage both the board members and the public to attend. Agendas, as always, are on our website. Our XCOM meeting is going to be held at the usual time this month on the 18th. That's on Wednesday at 9 a.m. this month. And then we also have a board retreat scheduled for this month. So many meetings for the calendar. The board retreat is an annual event, and this year it'll be occurring on the 25th, which is a Wednesday. It goes from 9:30 to 4, although we may be able to wrap up before 4. We'll see how far we get through the agenda before that time. And the meeting will be at the Marin Art and Garden Center as it was last year, which is in Ross. Then next, I just wanted to point out a couple of activities that have happened in the community recently or are planned. MCE participated in an EV charging station ribbon cutting yesterday in Mill Valley, and we were excited to be part of that event to help cut the ribbon for this charging station that will be supplied by Deep Green Energy, which we're really excited about. There is another EV ribbon cutting ceremony that's scheduled for September 29th, and this will be at the Marin County Civic Center, where an EV charging station is set to be launched on that day. So we're excited about that. I'd also like to let folks know that on September 7th, the MCE is sponsoring the Richmond Solar Thon, where there are going to be more than 8 solar installations placed in Richmond's Iron Triangle on more than 8 low-income homes. And this is a really exciting event that is being coordinated through Grid Alternatives that involves the people that live in the homes, working with solar contractors and with others in the community to do these installations. It's also a fundraiser for Grid Alternatives to be able to do more installations on low-income rooftops in the future. So it's an exciting event that we recommend attending if you're able to participate. And then the last event in the community I wanted to mention, we'll have a representative at the Santa Fe Business Chamber Showcase, which is coming up on September 11th next week. And that's it for my report.
Great. Any questions for Dawn? Okay, thanks. Item 4, consent calendar. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review it.
I'll move.
Second.
Any other comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That matter carries. Item 5, the Charles F. McGlashan Advocacy Award. Don, are you going to kick us off?
Actually, you have Raphael to take that.
Okay.
So on June 2nd, 2011, your board established the Charles F. McGlashan Advocacy Award to recognize individuals and organizations who have demonstrated passion, dedication, and leadership to promote MCE, as exemplified by the late Charles McGlashan. To date, the award has been given to Barbara George of Women Energy Matters, and last year to the Main Street Moms. On August 21st, the executive committee of your board recommended that Lee Dutton of the San Anselmo Quality of Life Commission be the third recipient of the Charles McGlashan Award. I first met Lee in January of 2012 when she approached me about how she could do more with the help of the San Anselmo Quality of Life Commission to promote deep green in San Anselmo and Marin at large. We did a lot of brainstorming together to come up with various campaigns, and out of that, Lee really kind of spurred the group to take deep green on as one of their priority goals. And the group has since gone out to local businesses and talked to local business owners, promoted deep green through social media, promoted deep green at various events, including the San Anselmo Day Parade, which is coming up soon. I'd also like to call out the group at large. Former board member Barbara Thornton is a member of the group, as is Sita Fufu, who's here with us as well. You may recognize Sita from our website. She was generous enough to allow us to take pictures of the energy efficiency improvements that she did on her home. She was a recipient of one of our EE rebates and was profiled on our website as such. Ms. Dutton has really kind of gone above and beyond for that. She deserves beyond.
So we'd like to present you with a certificate and take a picture up here if you're willing to come up. And For those of you who may not have seen this before, we have a plaque that gets a new name added every year. The first award was given out a couple of years ago, so we have already had your name added to this.
Thank you.
So
Also
we,
have-
first of all, a certificate that we're very proud to give you. Thank you very much for your great work on
Thank
behalf
you.
of your organization as well.
Yes.
And in fact, as Don mentioned, you're joining a very august group here. And needless to say, you know, named for a very special person as well. So I'd like to give you this. And why don't we get a photo?
Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Just take one more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
We should also mention that this hangs in the Charles McGlashan room, or the McGlashan conference room in our office, so it can be looked at when folks visit.
So Lee, if you want to say a few remarks as well,
Oh,
you don't have to.
no, yeah, I'd love to, sorry. I just wanted to say this is just such an honor to get this, given everything that Charles McGlashan did, so I was really inspired by getting this. I'm going to do a lot more now. And also, I just want to acknowledge how much the Quality of Life Commission has done to help promote Deep Green, and I don't think I would be getting this without all the work that they've been doing. So it's a great commission. Thank you.
Ready? I think we need a formal motion.
I'd be happy to move.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That matter carries. Okay, item 6, MEA audited financials.
Good evening. The audit for MEA for fiscal year ended March 31 was completed a few weeks ago, and you have before you a couple of documents. One shorter document the auditors prepared, and this is a general communication to the board about some of the process of the audit, and there's nothing indicated in here that's of significant concern or alarm. There's a couple of points of attention brought to the financial statements include estimates, and sometimes we don't think about that, but there are various estimates in the financial statements, so the reader ought to be aware of those. We didn't have indications of internal control weaknesses or findings or errors, which we're happy to say. There was one point that we'll report on later after we've had a chance to develop an update on a policy, and that had to do with our policy for accounting for uncollectible accounts and reserving for bad debts. And in any organization that has thousands of customers, there's occasional people who are unwilling or unable to pay. And so as part of the process of accounting, we calculate a reserve for those amounts. And we're developing some more formality. It takes some time to develop historical documentation about how what our rates of collectability and uncollectability are. And although we're confident that they're under the 1% mark, which is understood to be kind of an industry standard, we're still zeroing in on that with some precision. So we're going to be developing over the next several weeks a formalized policy on when to write those off for financial accounting purposes. The second document you have is actually the audited financial statement. That's a little bit longer document, and if it pleases the board, I'll go through some highlights and then a quick review of the content of the audit. If you flip over to page 1, you'll have the auditor's report. And again, Brennick, Trine and Day is a pretty decent size, 5 or 6 or 6 or 7 office California firm that does a lot of municipal audits. And they concluded their audit with their auditor's opinion. In that, interesting this year, there's a little bit of change. If you're used to looking at these reports, they're now formatted a little bit differently, and they break out the responsibility of management as opposed to the auditors. And our team, along with your in-house staff, is responsible to make sure the financial statements are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles for governments, and that there are proper internal controls and all that. The auditor comes in later to make sure that we actually did things right and had appropriate controls. So in the end, on the second page, they give us an opinion that the financial statements are in fact presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles for government. The format of the financial statements here are a little bit different than you see on a monthly basis. Well, I should say they're substantially different in that they're more complete with notes, a balance sheet, and they're also primarily prepared under the full accrual basis of accounting. The monthly reports that you get are on your budgetary basis. More or less, very, very similar, but there are a couple of differences. For instance, in these financial statements, the principal payments on debt are not considered an expenditure or an expense, even though for budget purposes we report that. On page 3, there's a, and I'll pick this up pretty quickly here, highlight on the second paragraph there under financial highlights, you can see that for the 2012-13 year, we had an increase in our net assets. Again, I'll give you a little review of accounting. You've got your assets, you've minus your liabilities, that's your net assets. In a business context, might be called equity. So our equity increased by about $3.9 million last fiscal year, up to just under $8 million as of the end of the year. And that was a nice thing to have as we're embarking on more growth and obtaining new accounts and needing extra working capital with that growth. So that was a welcome sight. On page 4, there's a summary of the balance sheet, and we'll get into, I'll show you some details on the larger balance sheet in just a moment. Let's skip over to page 6 where that is. And this is a listing. Again, you're not used to seeing this in your regular report, so I'll spend just a moment on this. You can see starting with the assets, you can see there's cash, there's receivables, which are billed receivables, there's some estimated accrued revenue, which is your customers accruing debt to you for using power, but it's between billing cycles. That's a pretty big number. Those are the main components of the assets. And then down below in the liability section, you can see there's trade payables, which is for contractors and for some energy suppliers, and then the big number there, $4.3 million in the 2013 column. That's what was at March, approximately 1 month's worth of energy costs that was outstanding. And as you know, there's about a 25-day delay in paying the bills by the time our energy supplier produces their invoices and we have to pay it. And then we've got some bank debt down below in a couple of sections, $1,073,000 maturing within 12 months, and then $3 million after that. And then down again at the bottom, very bottom in that first column, 2013, $7.9 million is the equity. And one more here, the next page 7, you can see the comparison between 2012 and 2013 in operation. So we went from about $23 million in the 2011-12 year to $52 million in the 12-13 year, and that's continuing to increase in the 13-14 year. And you can see the major cost, of course, is energy, along with the other followed by the other operating expenses. And the remainder of the report gives a little bit more explanation. There's a cash flow statement which kind of restates the activity in terms of the cash movements. And then the notes, at your leisure, you can read the accounting policies and get a little bit more detail. On page 13, I'll draw your attention to the accounts receivable. And you can see the gross amounts at the top of the page there. $5.4 million is in our listing of money that customers owe us that they've been billed. And we have a reserve in there of $840,000, which we believe is ample for uncollectibles. That number is fairly large in that we have not had a policy to actually remove accounts receivable from the books, although we've been reserving it year by year. So that's a number that's accumulated over the life of the organization, and that'll be trimmed down a little bit here. And then on page 15, another point of interest, this is forward-looking at the current debt obligations over the next 5 years. So you can see year by year what we're obligated to pay back. And then the last page, 16, is a summary of commitments. And you can see there's some pretty substantial obligations for future energy purchases, and which, when you look at those numbers compared to what our equity is at the current point, it makes our equity, although handsome, not look overwhelming in comparison to our future obligations, which of course stretch out for many years. So that's kind of a whirlwind, maybe more than you wanted to hear, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions from the board, Director Redcon.
Oh, hi. Thanks for your short and to the point report. I appreciate that. You mentioned that there's $1 million loan that's coming due soon. Is the term in a year, and what's our plan for? Are we refinancing it, or what's the deal with that $1 million?
Yeah, that number is actually the sum of the monthly payments on the loans that will mature over a year's time. So approximately a little under $100,000 a month comes due, and so that's what's going to happen in the next 12 months, our normal schedule. So we're making payments on a couple of different loans right now.
So the plan is to pay it off then?
They're being
down.
scheduled,
Okay.
amortized down. Right.
The second question, Mr. Chair, if that's okay?
Yes.
On page 13, you mentioned where we have the uncollectible accounts. And,
Yep.
and so it seemed like a pretty good percentage-wise bigger number. It went from 42,000 to 650 plus $1,000, or some 15 times. Is there a concern about the amount of uncollected accounts that is going to affect projections as we're going forward?
No, in fact, those were in the projections moving forward, and again, the number that's reported on the books is it seems a little higher than it should, because we've not reduced it for annually for write-downs to any substantial amount. So really, that's several years worth of billings and accumulated collections. So one of the items that we're going to come back to with, hopefully by the next meeting, will be the policy on how we're going to write those down. And essentially, the norm is every month we presume that there's going to be a level of uncollectible accounts, and over the course of the organization, it's varied between 1% and 0.5%. So we're a little bit we're back to a level of about 1% that we write off each month, and that was less than the amount projected for your planning purposes and your budget and your rate setting and all that. So what typically happens is there's a point where we actually take those accounts off the books. In our situation, it's not like a normal business, because there's a fair amount of recourse to go back and collect that. Once someone turns out to be not paying, we turn them back to PG&E. PG&E will continue collections for a while. We may turn them into a collection agency, if they leave the area and PG&E never hears from them again, we may be out of luck. But it's a long cycle of collection, so we haven't written those off too quickly. But in any case, they're less than was presumed in the projection, so it's not a matter of alarm.
Thank you.
What is the process of collection? At what point does PG&E say it's no longer our problem, it's your problem?
Yeah, I can respond to that. What causes us to make the determination that we're going to write off an amount is when a customer actually closes their account and they're no longer a customer. So typically, if a customer is delinquent over an extended period of time, we do return them to PG&E for service. And then we keep that as an uncollectible open on the books, because when charges come in, they have to go to first charges first. So if a customer pays 6 months later for energy they used when they were still our customer, those charges will eventually come into us. But if the customer closes their account or moves out of the PG&E territory, PG&E will notify us that that has happened. And that's the point at which we write the customer off.
Question on page 7, professional services. There's a jump from about 1.5 million to 3.7 million.
The largest increase there has to do with our data manager, who is paid based on volume and the number of accounts And so it's directly related to the volume level. So that's a large number. In fact, in the 12-13 year, it was about $1.8 million of that total.
Okay. Thanks. Any further questions, members of the public? Okay, thank you. Do we need action on this item?
No, discussion only.
Thanks again. Item 7, energy efficiency update.
Hello. I'll actually stay at the table to start today.
Actually, we're going to start with, you're going to be
OVR.
talking about a program and then the update. Okay.
And then the update. Switched it around a little bit this time. So the presentation will be for the next item. I don't actually have a presentation for the single-family OVR, but I am thrilled to bring this item to consideration for the board today. What we're asking for this evening is approval of our operating agreement with First Community Bank. The operating agreement spells out the roles and responsibilities of each of the parties in implementing the single-family on-bill repayment program. The on-bill repayment program is a financing program whereby we partner with a private bank who provides the capital for loans, and then we place the loans on the utility bill to be repaid with the energy charge. It's a very neat program that actually creates that inherent connection between the energy savings that you can expect to achieve through your financed project and the actual cost of financing. Additionally, with the approval of this agreement, this will pave the way for MEA to be the first entity in the state of California to offer the service for the single-family residential customers. So it's very exciting for us. We are looking to partner with First Community Bank, a bank out of Santa Rosa, on this program. They have been excellent partners for us so far as we've worked through the details of this operating agreement. The product that we agreed to is a 6.5% unsecured product for the single-family sector. We were able to encourage them to lend down to FICOs as low as 640, and I'll talk about that in a second, so that we can try and create credit for some communities who don't have credit right now. The loans are available for 5 years for $7,500 and less, and up to 10 years for larger loans. The total eligible loan window, you can finance a loan as low as $2,500 up to $30,000. The bank will consider larger loans than $30,000 on a case-by-case basis if they have an opportunity to look a little more closely. There's a $50 non-refundable application fee and a $150 refundable loan documentation fee. If you don't actually follow through with the loan to disbursement, you do get to have that $150 back. Additionally, that can be folded into the overall loan size and be financed. A little bit more about how we were able to encourage the bank to lend to lower FICOs. While this product is unsecured, we are bringing something called the Loan Loss Reserve Fund to the table. This is similar to what we've done with our multifamily and small commercial program. So we protect the bank against a certain amount of losses defined as a percentage of the overall portfolio of loans. The Loan Loss Reserve is funded through our energy efficiency dollars that were awarded to us by the California Public Utilities Commission. They were awarded for this purpose. And what we did with the Loan Loss Reserve Fund in this case, which is different than the single family and multifamily program, is that we actually tiered the loan loss reserve. So we cover a little bit different amount of the loss depending on what FICO range we're at. So for someone in a 700 plus FICO range, we'll cover about 5% of the loss. For someone in a 671 to 700 FICO range, we'll cover 10% of the loss. And then for someone at a 640 to 670 FICO range, we'll cover 15% of the loss. And that table is actually included in the staff report if going by those numbers was too fast. What that means in practicality is that when any loan is originated that's in the 700 range, we allocate 5% of that overall loan size to the Loan Loss Reserve Fund. If a borrower defaults at any point in time, we'll cover 100% of the loss. We are protected at a total overall cap of the Loan Loss Reserve Fund, so we'll never fund more than $500,000 or 10% of their $5 million commitment. This program is also slightly different from our multifamily and small commercial program because we don't actually have a single family rebate program like we do for multifamily and small commercial. So we've had to define the projects based on eligible IOU rebate programs, investor-owned utility programs. We've selected the Home Energy Upgrade Program, formerly known as the Energy Upgrade California Program. This is the advanced whole house performance program and really the one that gets the big price tag when you're doing projects under that program. They average around $7,000 to $12,000 for a project under that program. Additionally, we are looking to finance specific single measures. So if your HVAC system breaks down or your domestic hot water system, like your water heater breaks down, those are also eligible measures as long as they meet a minimum efficiency standard and as long as you pull permits and can demonstrate compliance with permits. This program design has been vetted a few times. We did bring a handful of the home performance contractors in the area together for an initial roundtable, presented our program design to them. We really feel that having the buy-in of the contractor community is going to be critical to the success of the program. Those are the folks who are interfacing with the customers at the time that they're considering a project and can really make people aware of the financing option. So it's important that it's something that they want to work with. Based off of the outcome of that meeting, we did work with the bank to make a couple of changes. So I'm hopeful that we can show the goodwill to the contractor community by working to incorporate their feedback early on. Additionally, we hope to make this a quarterly thing, to have ongoing quarterly meetings with the contractors to troubleshoot any problems that arise and make sure that they stay engaged. Really, in this one, we're learning from the County of Sonoma, who has done a very fabulous job with their financing program and really attributes a lot of that success to their relationship with their contractor community. So we get to learn something from our neighbors to the north. Additionally, we brought this program design before the Executive Committee in August. The Executive Committee did vote unanimously to recommend approval of the agreement at this meeting. In addition to that motion, there was additional feedback provided at the Executive Committee. There was a desire to investigate the ability to finance renewable energy improvements. Something I should have mentioned is that because this is funded by energy efficiency dollars in the form of the Loan Loss Reserve Fund, we can't use the loan dollars to also fund renewable energy. It can only be energy efficiency measures. So there was feedback at the Executive Committee that it would be great to find a way to actually incorporate solar into the program or other distributed generation technologies. In addition, there was feedback at the meeting that marketing was going to be a really important component of this and that we really needed to try and find a way to work on the marketing. Since that meeting, we have been working with First Community Bank to investigate the possibility of doing solar. Those are ongoing conversations. There's interest from the bank, but there are details that need to be worked out. The basic gist of the conversation is that if those funds are not secured with the Loan Loss Reserve Fund, if they choose to offer their own solar energy lending program, we have the ability to place that loan on the bill. It just can't be backed by the Loan Loss Reserve Fund. So with that nuance, we do have the ability to move forward with solar. So we are having those conversations and seeing if there's a possibility that they would be interested at a rate that we think is attractive. Additionally, there is an ongoing statewide financing decision that's playing out at the Public Utilities Commission. This would pave the way for a handful of statewide financing programs similar to what we're doing right now. And I have put comments on record under that proceeding suggesting that they lift the restriction on renewable energy specifically for this type of program. I think that there's really a lot of opportunity to improve uptake of energy efficiency if you allow solar as well. I think people tend to like the idea of solar panels more than they like the idea of efficiency, so drag them kicking and screaming. The other thing that we have been working on as a result of the Executive Committee meeting is working on developing our marketing plan. We've had some initial meetings with First Community Bank about how to move forward on that. They're actually working internally on drafting a marketing plan. They have agreed to match our marketing budget for the program, which is great news, so out of their own pocket. Which brings us up to a total of $40,000, which we can set aside to market this program. So that's really great news. Again, they've just been very strong partners. They are very active in working with us on this program and show a real commitment to the success of the program as well. So it's been a real pleasure to work with First Community Bank. I will ask at this time for your approval of this item if you so choose. After we take motion on this, if it is approved, we'll be finalizing our documents for this, finalizing our marketing plan associated with the program as well, and then aiming for an October 1st launch to really get applications on the street and get people enrolled. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
And I will comment that we had an opportunity to meet First Community as part of the XCOM, and we're very impressed. It seems like they're a great match throughout the RIPCON.
So, Becky, how would a homeowner be able to calculate that they're actually gonna save money versus 6.5% interest on the loan versus how much money they'll save if they put all the energy efficiency improvements that are suggested for their house. How would someone figure that out?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. One of the things that we're working
That's called a softball.
We talked about this beforehand. One of the things that we're working on developing for our single-family web portal program is actually something called the financing marketplace. That's a spot where people will be able to put together their proposed action plan or the scope of work that they receive from a contractor, get estimated energy savings based on their usage, their actual energy rate, and information like that. And then they'll also be able to overlay that against the financing information. So they can choose our product, it'll be pre-populated with the terms that are specific to the program, and then that'll give them a picture of what their monthly cost of financing will be. So,
and what kind of support when someone goes to the website and they're perhaps as sophisticated as I am and can't figure it out and then wants to talk to a human being, what happens then?
that makes sense. So we are working with our call center to get them up to speed on our programs, but it probably wouldn't be the sort of analysis of the program that you're talking about. One of the other things that we are hoping to do with our contractor community is prepare for them some marketing materials and talk to them about the kinds of things that they can and can't say. There are some restrictions in the consumer lending world around how much a contractor can or can't engage with the consumer on these types of conversations. So we need to make sure that those lines are clearly communicated. But the contractors are the ones who will be interacting with the customers about their energy project and will be qualified to at least access the tools that we have on the website to help the customer through that process.
Can I follow up on that?
Yes.
Becky, will there be a single point of contact at the bank for people who still have questions after talking to the contractor using the online?
Yes, I believe so. And the bank, they currently don't have a branch. They have one branch based in Corte Madera that's based out of a shopping mall, I think they told us.
Right, they did.
But they are seeing this program as an opportunity for expansion for them, and they'd very much like to expand into this area. So I think there's also a desire to have more in-person connection with customers as part of the program.
Thank you.
Yes.
So let me just go backtrack. Why would somebody want to do this as opposed to sort of taking out a home equity loan, which is tax deductible to the property? This is obviously not tax deductible, it's for equipment.
There's a few different, basically every person is going to have to analyze the options that are available to them and make a choice. The financing marketplace that I talked about on our website isn't just going to focus on this program. It will also show things like a home equity line of credit as one possibility to explore. But if someone doesn't have the equity in their home, or if someone wants to leave that equity for another project, such as a kitchen retrofit or something along those lines down the road, then they may consider this as a viable alternative. I feel that the interest rate is pretty competitive, particularly for an unsecured product, so I think that there's a market out there for people who maybe don't want to pursue the equity option or don't have the equity available to them to do it. Especially given the housing market is on a rebound. I've seen that Marin in particular is really starting to get there, but I know that our neighbors to the east might not have the same profile.
So for example, if a house is underwater on a mortgage, this program would be available to the particular applicants. And that might be an advantage, but it might also mean that your loan loss portfolio calculations don't add up because the FICO scores might be a little lower than you might expect, considering the fact that there's difficulty paying for a mortgage and whatnot. So you don't really hit that loan loss portfolio. Thought through that kind of process a little bit?
Yeah, I think what it really comes down to is that we're trying something a little new here. I think that, number one, it's a new type of lending product, and so the loan loss reserve actually serves two functions. It protects the bank against a certain amount of losses, which is nice for their balance sheet, but it also encourages them to lend in this space in the first place, which is something that not a lot of banks are doing. They haven't really explored the concept of energy efficiency lending. So I think it's understood that we're going to take a certain amount of a hit on this product, but nobody really understands yet how much that's going to be. This program isn't completely unique. There are on-bill repayment programs in New York. So far, those programs have seen 1% default rate since they've been launched. It may even be less than that. So the profile thus far is pretty good. But we can expect that we will see some loss on this.
Well, and it looks like they're trying to manage the risk with a FICO band approach as well. Yeah, I think the key on this one is going to be to market it, get the word out. It's good to hear that the bank will be doing that as well. So, thank you. Any further questions? Yes.
Is there, for the contractors that may be involved in this, is there going to be not necessarily a certification, but something that you know that this contractor is familiar with this and knows exactly what to do, as opposed to just out there in the general community? Is there going to be like a recommended list of contractors?
So we're working with the bank to work out those details. I'm predisposed to do that, but they have some compliance concerns about exactly how we structure that certification, if you will, and the way that we market the availability of it. When I initially met with the contractor community, I suggested that that was going to be a component of the program, that we would have a webinar or something along those lines. And I think that we could make that work. I've been working with our friends at SMUD, who have been doing energy efficiency lending for many years, although not on bill. And they do manage a contractor network and have agreed to provide me with the materials that they use for the training. So I'm hoping to look at that as an example, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel too much. And I also think, partially to your point, Damon, one of the things that I think could be useful here is if we have some template marketing materials that are available for contractors to slightly modify. For example, a PDF where they can add their logo on the bottom corner and actually hand to consumers as they're out giving quotes. And that's the kind of thing that we could give to contractors if they come to our training and pass our certification. So I think there's some opportunity to make it a value add for the contractor as well, and hopefully get more participation.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Just a question, Barbara Cole, Fairfax. Just wondering, any possibility of any of the contractors offering discounts for participating in the program? Just that might be kind of a marketing thing for them, as well as maybe rather than providing a list, because you don't necessarily want to recommend one contractor over another, but you get the folks who are trained to get the certification, but then some of them may offer discounts and they may get more business that way. And we might get better deals for some of the customers.
That's a very interesting point. I know that there is a lending product available to contractors through an organization called GeoSmart, and that's like a 17% unsecured product, but contractors are able to buy it down, and often do, even sometimes to half that interest rate. And so I know that that's a really great idea, and there's interest out there, so that's something I can bring up with the bank and see if they have any interest in working on a one-time contribution of funds from the contractor to buy down the cost of financing or something like that. Thanks.
Yes.
So Becky, I would be concerned or be careful with this new financing product and the contractor community and the homeowners. We're not we quote want to partner in encouraging that to happen, but we're not in the legal sense partners. And so I think we have to be really careful, because that's a private matter between a homeowner and a contractor, who they hire, and we can educate the contractors that this financing product is available. It's great, and if you need more information about it, you call the bank or someone from customer service through MCE. But I caution from a legal standpoint that we're careful that we're not seen as recommending contractors or I didn't catch what you were saying about logos with contractors' logo and MCE. I just think there needs to be a clear line, and you consult with our legal counsel on that. But careful.
Absolutely.
With that, because only every home remodel project I've ever known ends up with some problem.
Yeah, it's a point very well taken, and I think that has a lot to do with the bank's apprehension along having some kind of certification or something like that. So there clearly is some legal analysis that we need to look at so we can determine the right way to shape that kind of a thing.
It's a point well taken. Any further questions? Members of the public? Okay, so we need a motion to approve the program.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? That matter carries.
Thank you.
Item 8, energy efficiency update.
We'll move up to the podium for this one. Great. So we have had a lot of movement on the energy efficiency program since I last stood before the board. I think in June was the last time I was able to give an update on the program. So I'm excited to come before you tonight and talk a little bit about some of the program progress and status that we've had, some of the challenges that we're working through, and then some of the accomplishments that we've achieved. In typical fashion, I'll try to make this quick, but not too quick. So the multifamily program update, we currently have 5 projects that are in the pipeline that represents 15 sites. Just today, we finally got the approval to issue the MEA rebate, so that project is completely finished. That was a 5-site project with over 500 units. That's not represented in the pipeline figures because that one is currently out of the pipeline. But we're really thrilled to have finished that. We're helping to bring just a little over $5,000 in incentive money to the table for that project. So we're really excited about that.
That's Marin Housing Authority.
That's Marin Housing Authority. In addition to the rebate money that we're bringing to the table, we also did provide free in-unit measures for those 500 units. So that was something close to 1,000 light bulbs, 500 water fixtures, things along those lines. And those will provide savings to the tenants immediately. One thing that we've realized, this is along the vein of challenges that we're working through, is that our initial outreach strategy with the multifamily program wasn't getting the traction we had hoped it would. You may recall, for those of you who were there at the time, that we had taken a list of our property accounts. We cross-referenced it with county assessor data to identify which of our accounts were multifamily, and then we further narrowed it down based on the age of the building, based on whether it was master metered or individually metered, and we actually had a very good targeted list of properties. But then the next step was we started going through and cold calling the properties and trying to get a hold of someone. And that was not a very successful approach. Most of the time, we couldn't get someone to pick up the phone, either because they weren't there or because the phone number was wrong. We did get a couple properties in the pipeline as a result of that, but we had called somewhere around 50 properties, and so that was not a very high conversion rate, and we figured that we were kind of wasting our time. So we've done a couple things differently. One of the things that we did is we worked with the City of Richmond. They mail out Section 8 vouchers to property owners in the City of Richmond, to multifamily property owners, and we were able to get an insert into that mailed to approximately 650 to 700 recipients just in the month of August. So I think those went out sometime very recently in the last week or so, and I'll have to check and see if we're getting any traction from there. Another thing that we think is really going to make a big difference is actually shifting our strategy from a phone call strategy to an in-person presentation strategy. So now we've been working with a lot of different organizations around the area to try and schedule presentations in front of them. We've worked with Megan Duran from MCCDC, who's handling the outreach and property owner contacts for us. She put together a very good presentation. She worked really closely with Jamie Tuckey. It's beautiful. She subjected herself to us sitting and writing notes and giving her feedback a couple times. And we feel really good about it. So
that was the Marin City Community Development Corporation?
Yes, sorry, Marin City CDC. So they're actually starting tomorrow morning. I forget the name of the organization they're going to tomorrow morning. 6:45 in the morning is the first one. And basically at this point, Rafi is working really closely with Megan to try and find organizations to schedule time in front of them to do all the different things that we can. Another thing that we recently talked about doing, this is just as recent as this week, so it's not included in the presentation, is providing an exit form for folks to participate in the program to try and get feedback about how they felt about the experience, what could have been improved on. Also using that as a chance to catch people who are comfortable doing testimonials or being used as case studies, and asking some of those people to actually connect us directly to other property owners. So not just giving us contact information, but actually sending an email, making the connection, talking about their good experience in the program, and making a referral. And we think that that's something that will really get some good traction. So those are some of the new. And we did do a revised script. We met with some of our folks some of our friends at the Stop Waste organization, the Alameda County Waste Management Authority. And they are some of the main authorities, I would say, in the country on multifamily programs. And they actually thought that our cold call outreach strategy sounded good to them. They were surprised that we got such low numbers. So they worked with us to revise the script and to suggest some other ways that we could potentially get more uptake from that. Initial program results, I should mention that most of these results come from the end of July, and we have some new numbers that I wasn't able to include after we submitted the staff report, so they're still coming. But we spent about $90,000 in the program, have 18,500 kilowatt hour savings, 3,000, just a little under 3,300 therms. This is essentially from the MEA project that these savings are reported from, so we have a few others that are coming out of the pipeline that haven't been included in this yet. The performance metrics so far, we have 1 project representing 5 sites, and technical assistance to 6 projects representing 15 sites, and 12 contractors trained. Oh, 32 contractors trained. Let's say 12? 32. Should say 32. We had 12 contractors that we trained through Marin City Community Development Corporation to do the direct install work. But in addition to that, we recently had our Richmond Build training program graduate out about 20 participants as well. So it should be 32. Moving on to the small commercial program. The small commercial program has been in full swing since about April. Since then, they've managed to touch 789 businesses through outreach. Of that, they've completed 103 audits for the basic package, and then 7 audits for the. Okay, so we have done 789, touched 789 businesses, converted that to 103 audits. We just recently finished the Novato canvassing campaign, which finished on August 22nd, and we launched our Richmond saturation campaign August 5th. The Richmond saturation campaign is really exciting. We were able to actually get PG&E to commit to about 1.5 million kilowatt hour reduction targets in the Richmond area. So that's exciting that we were able to get that kind of commitment from them. So far, we started on the San Pablo corridor for the canvassing campaign in Richmond. Again, this is another area where we noticed, especially for the whole building package, that we weren't seeing the numbers that we wanted to see. And so we've actually been working since July to revise that outreach strategy as well. And a very similar thing, where instead of doing door-by-door neighborhood canvassing, where a lot of times the decision maker isn't present, sometimes they don't have keys to the HVAC room or other equipment, mechanical systems that we need to review to do a whole building audit. So now instead what we're really doing is building off of a lot of the successful outreach that our community affairs team has done in Richmond, and working with some of the relationships that they've built to actually get in front of the Chamber of Commerce or the Council of Industries. Alex and Elena both have been extremely helpful, especially in the last couple of weeks when Alex got back from, I don't know, being gone for his wedding or something, and really has helped us get some of those numbers up. So I'm excited about some of the contacts that we've made just in the past week. Interesting. Okay, so initial program results. We spent about $96,000 in this program as well. So far, we only have 10,000 kilowatt hours to report, but again, that's due. We have almost doubled that number since I put this presentation together, just based on invoice projects. We have 8 invoice projects so far that have come through the pipeline out of the 789 businesses that we've touched, and then the 103 audits that we provided. I guess 110 with the whole program. The single family program, this one is also something that we're working really hard on right now. The home utility reports are something that we finalized very recently, and we're anticipating them to go out September 15th. We're targeting 4,850 households initially.
What's a home utility report?
And as a refresher, the home utility reports are something that goes to your house, and actually when you open it, it shows you how your energy use, how your specific energy use based on your account information compares to a comparable neighbor. So we'll say, okay, if you have a 1,000 square foot house, your neighbor in the same area has a 1,000 square foot house, and oh my gosh, you're using 30% more energy than they are. And the idea is that it's supposed to really show people from a comparative result how they compare and convince them to try and do something. So the first page is all metrics about your energy use, how it compares to others, how you've used energy seasonally over the course of the year. And then if you flip the page, it has a series of recommendations for things that you can do with some initial estimates of money that you can save. And the real takeaway is that it connects you to the web portal, where you can actually log in, set up an account, find a contractor, find rebates, manage your energy use in a really hands-on kind of a way. So far, these type of programs have been shown to achieve close to a 2% energy reduction per customer just by showing them how much energy they're using. So we're hoping that combining that home utility report with the powerful web tool that we have can really increase that a lot and get people to take action. So those are targeted to go out on September 15th. We have made some changes to the schools program since our spring pilot, and we're really excited to launch it this fall. I'm really excited about some of the changes that have been made. It used to be sort of a one-week program where we went in and worked with the teachers for 4 days and then disappeared. Now we're really trying to have a longer-term relationship with the classroom. We can check in every month, show them their progress relative to the other classrooms, and really try and keep people engaged in the program and in the web portal. Also, we're working with Strategic Energy Innovations, who's our implementer for this program, to get some prizes that can be available to the top performing classrooms. So far, we're looking at having either a day at Six Flags Magic Mountain or something like the Exploratorium. So it'll be the choice of the top student.
And which of the schools, Becky?
You know, I don't have the name of the schools that are participating right now. I emailed for that today. The last that I'd asked, they were still in recruitment mode.
Okay.
So they had, I think, 7 interested schools, and they were trying to narrow down to 4 based on like the number of interested teachers and the commitment from the principal.
Okay.
So I did email and I didn't get that, I'm sorry. But I can send you an email update if you're interested in that information when I hear that. Great. We've also made a lot of changes to the web portal to support the program. One of the things we found in the spring program is that we had sort of a school-specific page in the web portal, but people weren't finding it from the main page. So now we actually developed an entire portal just for the schools program, and it's really slick. I'm really optimistic that it's going to be more user-friendly and more engaging for people to participate in. One of the approaches that didn't end up working out as well as we'd hoped was the neighborhood canvassing approach. This was supposed to be a strategy where a woman named Leslie Sheridan, who's had a lot of success with this in Sonoma, basically goes door to door, targeting high energy use homes, and offers people an in-home consultation. Sits down, walks through their home with them, enters information into the web portal on an iPad, and then actually builds them an action report and helps them make it to that next step. Out of the first 62 homes that they visited, they were only able to contact 2 homeowners. Now, in large part, the first weekend that they went out, this is because they were targeting high energy users, and it turns out a lot of those users live in gated communities. We weren't even able to get to the front door in a lot of those houses. You live and you learn. The next weekend, they actually revised the targeted list and downsized the home size a little bit to target not the highest energy users, but maybe some of the mid-level users. And in this case, a lot of the homeowners just weren't there. So at this point, we're deciding that idea probably isn't working the way it should, and we're trying to find some other ways to use that funding. Just today, Dawn had the excellent suggestion that we could consider trying to shuffle some of that funding potentially into the schools program, expand the schools that we can serve, particularly focusing potentially on private schools, where we may find a lot of those high energy use households who have their students in those schools. Good idea. So the initial program results for that one, we've spent a little over $100,000. The majority of that time has been spent to actually get the web portal up and running. We haven't reported any savings for that. All of the savings that are reported under this program are based on the home utility reports. So as soon as we start to mail those out and get a couple months, we can take a look and see how people are doing. The households touched via outreach at this point is 62, and that's not the 62 houses that we tried to touch. That's based off of the school program. 364 action plans have been developed, and we have 67 households that have so far participated in the co-op petitions, which are the attempts for everybody to work as hard as they can to get energy savings in the schools program. Apparently, the Marin School District doesn't like competitions, co-op petitions. All right, are there any questions?
When you give those budgets for money spent on each of the different programs, is that hard dollars out? Does that include staff time?
Yes.
How is it? So you're budgeting your time and all the folks that are working with you is budgeted in there. I'm wondering from a metric, ultimately, can we get reports if you think it's a good idea that we get dollars spent to kilowatt hours saved, something like that, so you know which programs are working, not working, how efficient that sort of thing. I would think that would be a good metric that would be helpful to the board, because I realize this is all starting out, but at some point we're going to want to know that all this money and energy, well, I misspoke. Human energy is being well spent so that, we're being effective on the efforts.
Absolutely. I think that that's a great idea, and I would like to continue using a format similar to the one I used tonight to relay the results that we're starting to achieve now that we're making our reports to the CPUC and we're compiling that information. So if there are any other suggestions of metrics that you're not seeing that you really want to know, I would love to hear that kind of feedback. I can turn this into a template and just update it as the months go.
How often do you report to the CPUC?
I report to the CPUC on a monthly basis for really high-level information. They ask for total dollars spent per program on a monthly and on a cumulative basis, and then they ask for energy saved per program. They do ask for some sort of detailed information. Are we getting those energy savings from lighting? Are we getting them from HVAC? So that kind of information we have. And then we have quarterly reports, which are much more detailed and much more difficult to accomplish. And we just did our first one of those in August. So we can have information including how many light bulbs we installed and where we installed them, and that kind of information also will be more available.
So we got approximately $4 million from the CPUC on this. I assume there's some sort of metrics again that they're expecting performance on our end in order to say that, wow, we're glad that we gave you guys $4 million, or well, that was a bust. So can you keep the board informed on some reasonable basis of how we're doing and what metrics the CPUC is applying to you so that we know that we're doing well, or, and they're likely maybe to give another grant in the next fiscal year, or however it works. But as I sit here, I don't have any idea how we're doing in relation to what the PUC is thinking.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
yeah, maybe in conjunction with the quarterly, at least in that regard. Yes.
Do you have a goal or a mission that you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, and I don't have the total target, the total number of kilowatt-hour savings directly in front of me. And I don't want to come up with something off the top of my head because I'm afraid I'll give you wrong information. But I can get that for you. And it's actually included in our program implementation plan. So when we proposed to the CPUC our set of programs and the dollars that we thought we needed to accomplish them, we also told them how much energy savings we thought we could achieve. We did that per program and overall. So.
Can you explain what the savings portion of the initial program results? What 18,490 kilowatt hours means in some fashion other than 18,490 kilowatt hours?
Sure, I can do my best. So the typical residential home uses, I think, 600 kilowatt hours a year, or 600 kilowatt hours a month, excuse me. So that gives you about a picture of comparative use. My math isn't as good as it should be. 6 times 2 times 3. 3 months?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And one other thing, if I could just add to what Becky said, is that your comment, Director Rifkind, is exactly what the CPUC asks for, and so we're already reporting on that. There's a metric that all utilities running EE programs have to report on, and it's really the benchmark to determine if your program is successful or not. And it's a ratio. It's a ratio of how much you've spent and how many kilowatt hours you've saved. So we proposed what we expected to save per dollar spent in our EE proposal. And so when we report to the CPUC, we're able to demonstrate our progress towards achieving that goal.
So great. So I just think that maybe we need to see a slide or a graph that shows where we are on the metrics, just so it's like fundraising for a high school. We're almost there, and so we have an idea of give pressure on all the directors here, no pressure, to help be supportive of the energy efficiency program through our own abilities to outreach as well. Every little kilowatt counts, right?
That's right. Further questions, members of the public? All right, thanks, Becky. Item 9, power content label.
Okay, so this item is focused on primarily California's Power Source Disclosure Program, which is administered by the California Energy Commission for the primary purpose of communicating accurate information to California consumers about the sources of power that they use and that are ultimately delivered to them. them by retail sellers like MCE and PG&E and the like. This program really created two key obligations for retail sellers. One of them is an annual reporting obligation that is to be completed by June 1 of each calendar year. And that really requires a communication to the California Energy Commission of all of the different specific energy purchases that are completed by each retail seller and what portion of the overall energy supply that was delivered to customers those different purchases make up. Those purchases and percentages are organized by fuel source, so if you can imagine various fuel sources that fall under the category of renewable energy like wind and solar and geothermal, those are all reported separately, and then more conventional fuel sources like natural gas and the like are also broken out as well. The second obligation that's created is focused on the power content label communication process, and this is really a key communication that every retail seller must make no later than October 1st of each year to all of their consumers, and this is really focused on what energy sources were supplied to them during the prior calendar year. There's an example of that communication that was sent by MCE to its customers in 2011, and that's attached to the staff report for your reference, and we'll talk a little bit about the upcoming process for creating a similar communication related to the 2012 calendar year. So I mentioned that really the key piece of the puzzle here in this power source disclosure program is making sure that accurate information regarding energy sources is communicated to customers, and the Public Utilities Code gets a little bit more specific and notes that the purpose of this program is to disclose accurate, reliable, and simple to understand information on the sources of energy that are delivered to customers. And so the form here, and you can see a table which is included in the staff report, is really just that. It's a very simplistic breakout by fuel source of each of the different energy purchases that was made by MCE during the 2012 calendar year and ultimately delivered to the customers. And you can see here that this label highlights some I think, key features of our supply portfolio, one of which is the fact that we deliver over 50% of our power supply from renewable sources. That's the default program. Light green, obviously, for voluntary participants in the deep green program, they do receive 100%, and that's also detailed out here. And then you can see how that breaks out among the different fuel sources that fall under the renewable energy category. The predominant source of our renewable energy supply is related to wind, and then we also have a certain portion of our supply that's focused on hydroelectric purchases as well. So all in total, 60% of the power supplied by MCE to its customers is basically carbon-free, and then the remaining 40% falls under the umbrella of unspecified power. And this is basically, these are purchases that are made from the California Independent System Operator, from really the market at large, and may come from a number of different fuel sources, but would predominantly be natural gas. So this here is also compares, this label compares what it is that MCE was able to do to the California supply portfolio in aggregate. And as you can see, the state is quite a ways behind MCE in its delivery of renewable energy generally, much more reliant on sources like coal and nuclear than we are here at MCE, and generally emphasizes the fact that MCE provides a much cleaner supply portfolio to its customers. The label here, as it's derived, is subject to very rigid reporting instructions. We literally have zero flexibility in how it is that we include information in this. The state defines those rules for us, and we follow them. And what you're left with here is, again, a pretty simple communication that forms the basis for our power content label that's ultimately delivered to customers a little later this month. And
so Kirby, just to interrupt, so the methodology in determining the percentages is set by the state, and that's what we follow?
Absolutely, yeah. It's very rigid, as a matter of fact, and so What it is that we do is we actually fill out a template, a reporting template that's provided by the Energy Commission, and based on the numbers that we fill in that template and the fuel sources that are assigned to each one of the purchases that we make, these percentages are derived. And we do include quite a bit of additional information related to those purchases, including the generator that supplied the power and various identification numbers related to each generator, so that there's really no ambiguity at all about where it is that those energy volumes are sourced from. So, yeah. One of the kind of the key distinctions that I want to highlight tonight, which is relevant for the recommendation here and the action item for this particular agenda item, is an attestation requirement that must be completed by your board. And through that process, what you're essentially doing is validating the accuracy of the information that's presented in this label to MCE customers. And as we discussed in last year's report, which was very similar to this one, we completed a very detailed review of all purchases that were made on behalf of our customers. We have various tracking accounts that we maintain and manage on a regular basis, reports that we file with the Public Utilities Commission related to our renewable energy purchases, as well as an audit, an independent audit of our Deep Green program and the purchases related thereto. And all of those pieces of the puzzle add up to a really detailed review of all of these transactions that ultimately supply MC customers with the energy that they use. And so what we're recommending tonight is that you complete that attestation and essentially verify the accuracy based on staff's recommendations and work completed by staff in this regard, so that we can fulfill our obligation to the Energy Commission and provide this attestation, which gives comfort to our customers that they are in fact getting what it is that we say we are providing to them. And this is a little different. As a public agency, we have a different requirement, this attestation, as opposed to what, say, PG&E and other investor-owned utilities must complete, which is a formal audit. So it's a much more streamlined process that we have to complete here. I'd go so far as to say that it's no less diligent on our part, but it's certainly a little bit less formal. And so what we'll be providing ultimately to the Energy Commission, if you so choose, are the meeting minutes from this evening's board meeting, as well as this staff report, indicating that your board has attested to the veracity, essentially, of the information included in this power content label. And so that is staff's recommendation tonight, that you accept our recommendation with regard to the accuracy of this information. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have before doing
Director Stewart.
So Kirby, I'm looking at the Deep Green Power Mix, and 2012 was united as 100% wind, and if you go back to 2011, it was 69 wind and 31% solar. Is this due to just sort of the timing of the different contracts that we had that were providing the energy to our Deep Green Power Mix, and what are we doing this year?
Yeah. So what happened in 2011, which was a little bit different, our Deep Green product was not Green E Energy certified during the 2011 calendar year. In 2012, we made a determination that Green E Energy certification would be valuable and meaningful to customers participating in that program by providing really a third-party verification of the purchases that were being made on behalf of those customers. And so in the 2011 calendar year, there were solar purchases that we completed on behalf of Deep Green Energy customers that were not Green E Energy eligible. And so in this particular case, in 2012 and then moving forward in 2013, all the purchases that were made are Green E Energy eligible. And really the most cost-effective way to do that on behalf of Deep Green customers was to choose these wind resources. Yeah.
Further questions? Yes.
So the last page, Kirby, is a marketing thing that you're sending out, is that correct?
This was the 2011 version. This was sent out in September, October of last year.
So this will be updated with the 2012 numbers?
Absolutely, yeah. Matter of fact, Jamie Tuckey is working on that now. And what you'll essentially see is the label that's provided in the staff report transferred into that communication along with some updated verbiage.
With the unspecified sources of power, you know, that's there, I know that there's a little, you know, legend that talks about it's not traceable to specific generation sources. But if somebody, you know, gave a specific question and said, that's 47% is pretty, it's a lot. What kinds of things are you talking about that are untraceable?
Yeah, well, the bulk of unspecified power sources in the state of California are going to come from natural gas resources. And it's a bit unfortunate, but the state actually made a determination, I think it was about 18 months ago, to no longer track the specific resource types that made up unspecified resources and decided to go with a more generic just categorization of that. So what we're left with now is just kind of a number and the knowledge generally that these purchases historically were primarily derived from natural gas resources. So yeah, and as a matter of fact, the California Air Resources Board has assigned a default emissions rate for unspecified purchases like this, and it's substantially similar to the emission rate of a natural gas generator. So yeah, that's another good way to understand that as well.
Thank you.
Just a question, Kirby. So the Department of Energy collects all these statistics on energy usage in each state and county. I'm guessing that comes from the state, but I'm not sure. I'm just wondering if looking at EIA's information, if possibly we could get a little more clarity on what these unspecified sources are. Maybe not. I mean, I have never looked at it in that level of detail, but I suspect they get it from the state, so it probably isn't there. But just wondering if you've looked into that at all.
Yeah, there is some state-specific and region-specific information that's provided, but the detail that they have is really not any greater than what we're seeing here. Yeah. So.
Director Sue.
Yeah, Kirby, I'd like to stay on this topic because I find this very confusing. So if unspecified sources of power is 40% and best guesses that sort of may be natural gas, but natural gas is broken out in a separate line, 2 lines above, as a particular line item, then how is it that one can say natural gas is 0, unspecified is 40, but we think that's natural gas? Something here is not, I'm not understanding.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. What happens just in the power markets generally is that power is bought and sold through the California Independent System Operator, which is essentially more or less the state's manager and operator of the bulk transmission system. And so when power is transacted through the California Independent System Operator, these are largely financial transactions. So there are generators that are running all the time throughout the state that are if you kind of liken it to a pool with straws in the pool and straws, you know, kind of going into the pool and coming out of the pool. These generators are filling the pool with water. And then entities like MEA and PG&E and others throughout the state have straws that are draining water from the pool. And the vast majority of the pipes or straws that are filling the pool are from natural gas generators. Now, you can have a specific transaction, so let's just, you know, take Calpine, for example, which has geothermal as well as natural gas resources. We could have a contract with one of their natural gas generators, and then if we had that contract with a specific generator and that generator was named in the contract, that would show up under natural gas in this line item. But when we're not buying from a specific generator, and in this case, through our agreement with Shell, which provides them quite a bit of flexibility in how it is that they choose to source power, they don't need to necessarily disclose to us where that power is coming from. And so they're buying on behalf of a much larger customer base than just MEA. And as part of that process, we just kind of take a share of these resources they buy, and take credit for them as unspecified, because there's no way of linking our purchase to any specific generator.
Got it. So this label gets more informative the more that we rely on individual contracts.
Absolutely, and to the extent that 100% of our purchases were made from specific sources, you can imagine that would be zero in that unspecified line item. So it's, yeah, you're absolutely right. And over time, I think, you know,
We're moving in that direction.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think also one more thing on this topic is, I believe it's 2016 mandatory reporting for utilities, AB 32 requirements come into play, so they become part of cap and trade. So I'm just wondering if maybe we might, I think staying with the individual contracts is the way to go, so we understand where it's coming from, but it's possible we may start getting more information when they start coming under that fold.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I think it's 2016, so stay tuned.
Yeah, and you will notice in comparing the 2011 label and the 2012 label, those unspecified purchases did go down. And so that, you know, I think that's a positive takeaway that quite frankly may be missed by a lot of folks. So.
Director Rivka.
I know we've talked about this before, but I can't remember the answer. So why is large hydro not renewable and small hydro is? And what's the metric to say what's a small versus a large?
It's the capacity of the unit. And it was established at 30 megawatts. Which
someone just made that up.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess technically the answer is yes. I mean, somebody had to make it up. Okay. But in this case, I think it was the California Energy Commission that made it up. And Beth, you could probably provide some more color.
Yeah, just a little bit of the context on that is the idea is that there are certain environmental impacts that hydroelectric facilities have on wildlife and fish, and just the water system in general. And so the state doesn't really want to encourage large hydroelectric facilities or too much increased use of large hydro. So, but it, you know, 30 megawatts is the cutoff. So.
And so really what's going to fall under that 30 megawatt limit is what is traditionally referred to as run-of-the-river hydro. So this is something that these are generators that are essentially put in a system, in a waterway without too much interruption of what would naturally occur. So yeah, that's another
Thank you. I want everyone to know that because there's a test at the end of the night. That's the cutoff between small and hydro. It's 30 megawatts. Okay.
Any further questions or comments? Yes.
I just had a question about what makes something green certified or not. Because I think, wasn't that coming from the Central Valley, that solar? Was that the solar that was coming from the water district in the Central Valley in 2011?
Yeah, that was not Green Energy certified. That
so
solar was not.
This question doesn't take a really long time. It's solar, right? Solar panels, and it's from a dedicated water district. So how is that, what's wrong with it?
Yeah, a lot of, so there are a number of different requirements that need to be met in order for a generator to qualify as green energy certified. One of those requirements is the age of the generator. So the idea with the green energy program is to encourage reliance on new renewables, so that you constantly have a focus on developing more and more renewables, and that this date kind of, it's a rolling date, so every year you kind of lose certain generators which fall out of eligibility based on, you know, their age. Another, of course, is the fuel source. So, you know, solar, you would think, well, that is a renewable energy resource, so why isn't it included? Another requirement is the metering configuration of the generator and whether or not it's a direct export or whether or not there's on-site use of that power. And in this case, because there's on-site use of that power, that limits the eligibility for green energy purposes. So that's why that piece of the puzzle.
So they could claim it, for example, like the airport that's going in, that wouldn't age out because it's local, it's distributed generation, so that wouldn't age out.
Yeah, well, that there is being used for an altogether different program. That's going to be used for the California Renewable Portfolio Standard. So we're not even pointing to that as a green energy eligible resource. It's an in-state, as you pointed out, it's a local resource. We're getting 100% of the output from that, so there aren't any metering issues. But this green energy feature with that particular generator, it's just not something that we ask the generator to pursue because that's not the program that we're using that renewable energy for. But it would be eligible. Yeah.
Further questions or comments? So Kirby, yeah, here we're really relying on you and staff for the bulletproof nature of the attestation.
Yeah, I understand.
You did do this right, Kirby, right?
Yeah, no fingers are crossed. Yeah, this,
we got you on tape.
Yeah, that's good. That's fine. No, there was a very high level of attention to this particular matter. I think we certainly understand the importance of accurately communicating with customers, and that's something that is we don't take lightly at all at the staff level, and I know you don't take it lightly at the board level either. So I think you can rest assured that the information has been looked at and re-looked at, and oftentimes looked at again, and maybe even again, and it's been included in reports and other areas as well. So by the time it ultimately gets to this piece of paper that you're looking at now and the communication that goes out to customers, we're very, very comfortable that this is highly accurate information. And we're happy to defend the numbers that are presented here. So
I have one question about that. On the accuracy, I see there's a footnote that says, because of rounding errors, it may not actually add up to 100, but the public will go, someone will go completely crazy if they add it up and they say, oh, these people aren't telling us the truth, it's 98 or 99 or 102 or something like that. It seems like on our side it does add up to 100, but I just encourage, if it's possible, that you actually use decimal points and make it add up to 100 on each column, if it doesn't.
Yeah, you believe it or not, that's a formatting issue that we are not at liberty to change. Yeah.
But make sure the footnote is prominent that it's rounding, and that's why it may not necessarily add up.
And not to put too fine a point on it, but we're not at liberty to change the footnote. This is quite literally a template, there's no flexibility.
Well, then it's Damon's signature to sign it anyway. I was watching it back, Damon.
Thank you.
So anyway, just to sum it up here, we've looked at this a great deal, and our recommendation is that you all endorse the accuracy of the information included in the power content label for 2012.
I'll move the same.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That matter carries. Item 10, PG&E bill redesign, long awaited. Oh, really?
Thanks. I'm going to talk over here so that I don't break my neck trying to look up what the presentation is I'm talking here. Justin Kudo, account manager, and we're going to talk about the redesigned PG&E bill. As you may know, PG&E has been going through a very substantial bill redesign. I believe the total budget they had for it was a 9-figure budget. It's something they've been working on for a couple of years now, and just want to go over that with you. All right, so the bill format has been completely redesigned. Most of you have probably received the new bill at this point. Not everybody, but probably about 98% of customers or so in MCE service area have received the new bills at this point. There's a transitional bill that happened for the July-August cycle. It's a bill where they presented some of the PG&E charges in a slightly different way. It was meant to help people in getting used to the new format. I think, to be perfectly frank, it just makes things more complicated and confusing, and that's been a bit unfortunate, but we've been dealing with that as we've gone along here. The full new format bill will be the September bill. So most of the bills received after about a week from today or so should be the full new format without any sort of transitional language. It's a much larger bill. The bill is full 8.5 by 11 pages. It has larger text. It really had a focus on readability, and it provides a lot more historical information. One thing that we run into a lot, one thing that I'm sure PG&E runs into a lot, is customers that see a jump in the bill, a change in the bill, and they say, well, why is my bill so high? And quite often it's, oh, well, your bill goes up this much or it changes in this way every year because you change your usage as you go through the year. And this will allow customers to look at sort of what their usage was last year during this month, what it was this year during this month, what was their usage the previous month, next month, how are they comparing? Are they using more electricity than they used to, or are they using less than they used to? One of the ways it affects MCE customers uniquely is that there's clear information for CCA direct access customers. PG&E did invite us to participate in this process, and we submitted a lot of comments on the third-party billing page. Many of those comments were taken, accepted, and we made a lot of improvements there. In other cases, they didn't accept our recommendations, and there are things that we're hoping to work on later this year. In particular, there's an inclusion of the full, what PG&E calls bundled rates. That's essentially the regular rates for non-CCA customers. So they provide the full charges, and then they walk back out of those full charges what they would have charged that customer for generation by applying a generation credit on the bill. So this is what the front page of the bill looks like here. I apologize to get the whole bill in. It means that some of the text is a little bit challenging to read. The account number and the dates are now put at the top of every single page. One of the problems before was you had a billing stub on the top of the page, and that had the account number on it, and as soon as the customer would go to pay the bill, they'd tear off that portion of the page, hand it in, and then they would say, well, where do I find my account number? So this is up at the top of every single page. There's the account number, the date, or the state of the statement, and the due date for the bill. And that's on every single page. You also have a clearer breakdown of MCE and PG&E charges. It specifically now says current PG&E electric delivery charges. And then it says MCE electric generation charges. That way people can see that they're paying for separate things, that they're not being double charged for the same service. One thing that's also changed is PG&E has a phone number they put on the front page, and they used to put the general PG&E customer service phone number. And the general representatives for PG&E don't always have the best, most accurate, up-to-date information on community choice aggregation. So what's changed is we've had them place the number for CCA specialists on the front page of the bill. So when a customer calls PG&E, they'll talk to somebody that knows about MCE and how MCE fits into PG&E's program. You also have historic usage data now. This is what we were talking about a little bit earlier, and you can see there's a graph here. It looks at the overall billing cost, how much the customer paid in each month over a 12-month period. It also looks at exactly what the current month usage is, previous month, previous year, etc. There is also an explanation of CCA service. That line, which is too small to read here, says that the charges on this page have been divided into PG&E delivery charges and CCA generation charges. There are no duplicate charges. This is something that's always actually been on our bills with PG&E. They've had it on the front page, but because the bill was so small before, and it was so far into the fine print and kind of clumped with everything else down at the bottom, nobody ever saw it. And we're hoping, as much as it's still in the fine print, that since there isn't that much other text on this page and there's a lot of space around it, that it'll be a little bit more prominent now. Sorry, do you have any questions on this page before I move on? So this is the second page. This is the back side of the first page. A lot of things have changed here. One thing that comes up in particular is there's an explanation and a definition for certain billing terms that PG&E uses. There's an explanation of what exactly is a PCIA. What is that? What are other aspects of the bill? You have your itemized PG&E delivery charges. This has always been kind of deep in the bill, and a customer could find it on third, fourth page, but it was kind of a messy format, and we found that most customers had a very hard time understanding it. So we're hoping that having it broken out here in a neat format will be something that customers can understand a little bit better. And this is just simply the back side of that payment stub on the front page. It gives an opportunity for customers to change all their billing information. So this is PG&E's delivery charges page. This is their half of the itemized billing breakdown. The old style format is up there on the top. And as you can see, it's kind of a messy format. It's not very easy to understand. They just put what the overall charges are. They use a few bits of terminology that are really outdated and that customers and even a lot of people in energy don't understand. They use a term called CRS, which means cost responsibility surcharge. Most PG&E representatives I've talked to don't even really know what that refers to or means. So it was not a very good format, and it was not simple for people to understand. The bottom part here is the new style delivery charges summary. And the reason why there's both of these on here is this was a transitional bill. So they put both formats on one bill. When you look at that and you break it down, the upper section there shows what the bundled PG&E charges are. They show what tier the customer's in, what the usage was within that tier, and what PG&E is charging them for at what rate for all the services, for generation, for delivery, etc. And then the section below that talks about MCE-related billing adjustments. So because this customer is third-party service, it doesn't have to pay PG&E for the generation cost. So there's a generation credit there. PG&E is saying, you're not paying us, we'll credit that back to you before giving you the full charge. There's also the power charge and difference adjustment, which is assessed to our customers, and then the franchise fee surcharge. And those are included there as well. This means that the number that customers see on that generation credit moving forward once they have the full bill, they can compare that with what they paid MCE for generation and see if, are we paying more? Are we paying about the same? Are we paying less? And then there's also the daily usage information here as well. And this really goes day by day through the entire billing period. And this is something that happened because of the smart meter rollout, where they can really break this down on a daily basis to show customers, oh hey, usage was a lot higher on these particular dates. And this is the MCE page. This is the third-party billing page for the MCE electric generation charges. This is really the main block where all of our information is contained. The format for all this has really taken the same form that it had previously, and this looks almost exactly like it used to look on the old bill with less spacing. That's not really something we've been happy about, but it is how it's presented right now. PG&E's focus was really getting the bill redesign rolled out for everything else and didn't focus on how it accepts data from MCE and interprets that inside the bill. One thing that has changed here is there's another section on the right side that says additional messages. This is a new section that we will be able to edit as long as we keep it as some sort of consistent message that goes for all customers, and as long as we give PG&E good advance notice to put something there. That's a really useful thing for us because all we've had before is that section over to the left where there's a little bit of text in italics, and that hasn't been very much space to work with. This way we can put on messages that talk about energy efficiency programs, that explain exactly what MCE is, how it operates, that talk about other things that we want to promote, and to leave them on the bill so that every customer can see that on a monthly basis. And then we can use the on-bill message on the left side for something that's more customer specific, or maybe for things like on-bill refinancing. So what's next at this point? We really think that the redesigned bill is a great improvement for CCA customers. It is a bill that's easier to understand, that makes better use of the space, that spreads everything out, and I think that customers have found it's a bill that's easier to look at. We think there's some increased flexibility for MCE to make changes to bills. Trying to work within PG&E's billing infrastructure is incredibly challenging, and there are an immense number of limitations. And this has reduced some of those restrictions, although it hasn't really alleviated them entirely. The bill right now, though, is in what PG&E calls a stabilization period, which essentially means they're debugging the bill and trying to identify any defects that are occurring with it. So they won't make any changes to the bill design until November, possibly December. We've requested a number of changes to the formatting, the spacing, to the locations of certain items. We want to move the on-bill message from being halfway in between our charges to another area below all the other charges, things like that. And we've requested all those things from PG&E. We're meeting and talking about it and trying to see how we can incorporate them in November and December. And we'll actually be talking about that to them a few times over the next week. In the future, we really plan on utilizing the bill messages. We plan on making a new net energy metering bill design with PG&E that'll be a lot easier for customers to read and easier for them to understand how much credit they have and to use for our on-bill payment program. Any questions?
Questions for Justin?
I have a question. How much did you say PG&E spent on this redesign?
7 figures.
I believe, and Dawn, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was a 8 or 9 figure redesign.
We can get back to you with that figure.
Well, the question is, can I sound like, is some component of that passed on to community choice aggregation customers distinct from what is passed on to PG&E customers in the state generally? If it is a 9-figure number, that's all.
Yeah, so the costs for the bill redesign were collected through the distribution function. So it's collected from all ratepayers, CCA, and bundled customers. So does that answer your question?
I'm wondering whether it's aggregated generally or whether we're being asked to bear some component of that.
No. CCAs are not, we pay a billing charge to PG&E on a monthly basis, on a per customer basis, and that's a separate tariff. These general bill redesigns are really exclusively PG&E, including the ones that are directly related to CCA, because this is part of their core function of being the billing provider.
Okay, thank you.
So 9-figure? Like $100 million?
I believe it was low 9. It could have been very high 8. I apologize.
We can take a look.
I apologize. I might have misspoke that.
No, I'd have to go back into the regulatory filings.
Yeah, I would be interested in knowing that number. Got it.
So the most important part of this whole thing for me is for our customers to be able to see that they're not double paying and they're only paying for their generation charges, and I see that's on this, it looks like page 3, where you were talking about, and so it's small, I can't.
This one right here in the...
Well, no, I thought it was on page 3 where it shows, well, whichever page it is.
Generation credit?
Sure. Page 1, okay. And I know that's a good page for it to be on, but the most important thing is for it to be as clear as possible for our customers to know that they're not double paying. And then maybe this is just something to think about in the future, given that we've just spent 8 or 9 figures as a society on rebilling, which is mind-boggling. I can't imagine in the age of computers that that's some number like that, but we're still the poor family relation to PG&E in this, where it says PG&E in every different possible direction. And we don't feel like, you know, I mean, I understand that's the whole point of CCAs, is that the IOUs are going to be doing all the other services and we're just doing generation. But just the way the bill is written this way, that's the message it's getting. And we're not, to our customers, we still look like we're just the little sideshow here. And so at some point, from even a marketing standpoint, there has to be a way that we can get a different bill format that's for that makes it our customers feel like that's their electricity service, as opposed to a few MCE initials in a few places on the bill. It kind of gets lost in the whole presentation. I'm just throwing that. I realize we're not going to solve the problem now, especially with all this money they did, but it's something going forward that maybe there will be a different way to do this bill, you know, in the future.
Are people hearing feedback on it yet out there?
Justin, have you received any comments or criticisms or compliments or on the new bill from customers?
We've actually not received too many comments from people. Some people are usually are often surprised by anything that changes and are a bit resistant about it. But in particular, we've seen a lot less confusion from customers during the Richmond rollout, where customers would think that they're being charged twice. In the case of particularly the Phase 2B rollout last year, when customers received their bills, they would simply say on them PG&E Electric, the same as always said, and then it would say Marin Clean Energy generation charges. And customers wouldn't understand that those were separate. In this case, it's clearly broken out into PG&E Electric Delivery instead of just saying PG&E Electric. And so I don't know if it's a result of that or some of the other outreach, but we've seen a lot less customers complaining that they're suddenly being double charged or think that they're paying for the same electricity twice.
Well, I gotta say, as a MC customer, I got my first bill, and my first bill was 50 pages long. Common household bill. Now I generate power, my own solar power, but I got my historical usage data going back from when I was first enrolled in MCE. Not only my historical usage data, but also my historical generation the power that I generate to put back on the grid. And it was 48 pages, and I told Don I will email it to her tomorrow because it would fill up your fax machine. And I was kind of put back by it because I thought, wow, here we're going to simplify the system, and I got a 48-page bill.
We know where the 9 figures.
Yeah. We killed all the Brazilian forests.
It's actually kind of interesting to see go back and look at all my historical usage, but after I got into 2011, I was like, it's getting kind of boring, you know. And I would imagine most people would be really perturbed by getting that kind of a bill. So I think there are definitely some bugs in the system. And I'm going to be emailing you a copy of my bill tomorrow, just as an example of what's out there.
That's definitely the first time I've heard of that issue. It's actually really interesting that you're having that issue because in talking with PG&E, they've said that for customers with NEM charges and those kinds of things, that they're not switching over to the new format and they're holding off on rolling out some of the true-up issues that and the design for those kind of statements. So that's actually supposed to use an old format, and so I'm not quite sure what's going on in your case. It certainly sounds like a clear error, and it's something I'm sure PG&E would like brought to their attention so they can fix it as well. But this is definitely the first time I've heard of that problem occurring, and we'll definitely appreciate getting your email.
Any further questions from the board or the public on this item? Okay. Item 11, appointment of chair, vice chair, treasurer, auditor, and secretary positions.
Great, so I'll just make a couple of comments on this item. This is a standard administrative item that we need to take care of on an annual basis, and it is referenced in our joint powers agreement that was approved and put into place way back in 2008. So if you're interested in looking at the applicable section, it's 4.13, selection of board officers. There's a designation for a chair and vice chair, a designation for a secretary, and then a designation for a treasurer and auditor. And at this time, we simply need to take a vote on who will continue filling or begin filling these positions. There are no term limits for these positions, but we do bring them back to the board for consideration on an annual basis. We discussed this in XCOM, and we have folks that have offered to fill these seats, and so I'll kind of go over that, although it's up to the board to take final action on this. So our current acting chair and vice chair, I believe, are interested in continuing or willing to continue in their respective positions. We have talked. We do not. Well, we need a new person to fill the treasurer and auditor position, and Director Athos has kindly offered to take on that task.
As long as our accountants do all the work.
Understood. And then I've been the person typically that fills the secretary role because I sign the minutes and that sort of thing. So that's what's been discussed, but I'll turn it over to you, Damon.
Okay, so treasurer and auditor is the same position?
Yeah, typically, that's how we've done it in the past.
Okay.
It's possible to break it out, but we've typically done them as the same person.
So the slate would be me continuing as chair, Director Sears as vice chair, Director Athos as treasurer auditor, and Dawn as secretary. Any discussion?
I'll move to approve the slate.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That matter carries. Okay, so item 12, we're actually going to skip and defer at this time. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll take that up either next month or the following because we may have some members changing on that committee, but we don't need to take action on that tonight.
Okay. Item 13, regulatory update.
Great. I looked up the figure. It seems to be around $19 million that PG&E spent on their bill redesign. So that's the general scale of what it's taken for them, for those who are curious. I certainly was. So regulatory update. I'm just going to cover 4 topics this time. The final decision came out on our petition for rulemaking. We have been involved in the PG&E general rate case in their phase 1. There is a recent decision out on the Energy Savings Performance Incentive, or SB, and also we've had increased regulatory involvement with more regulatory bodies, so I just wanted to fill you in on those. So you've seen this slide before. We filed a petition for rulemaking. We had many supportive entities and co-petitioners. We asked for a reform of exit fees, stranded costs, and non-bypassable charges. We wanted the commission to develop cost allocation, cross-subsidization principles, and then also increase the transparency, investor, and utility showings. So you've seen this slide before lots of times. So the final decision is now out. It is definitely a mixed bag. So I'm starting with the bad because then we can end on a higher note here. So basically the commission said that Senate Bill 790 didn't actually require them to act in this regard. So they don't need to adopt our rulemaking. And in fact, it denies the single rulemaking and says, go ahead and duke it out on a case-by-case basis here at the commission. That is the approach that we want you to take. And there is dicta in there that says that current cost allocation and fee calculation determinations are reasonable and consistent with state law, which really we do not believe to be the case, but frankly, it's better for us to just fight the battles and move forward than to try to change dicta. So, but there's lots of good things that came out of it. And in fact, a lot of the commissioners, when they spoke eloquently about voting down our petition for rulemaking, were actually spoke very much in support of making sure there's a fair playing field for CCA. So I think that this did have a good effect of, focusing the commission on CCA issues and the types of issues that we've raised here. And they found that the state law does require the commission to allocate costs on a fair and equitable basis. So that is a great acknowledgement that we received from the commission. And also that the commission is committed to making sure that CCAs can compete on a fair and equal basis with the utilities. So obviously this is going to continue to play out on a case-by-case basis, and we will be reusing these quotes ad nauseum. And one of the other great components is that the IOUs, they provided a statement in the decision that, in fact, the IOUs really do need to provide very comprehensive information in their testimony and in their applications on their cost allocation proposal. So whether something's going to be allocated to the distribution rate or the generation rate, more analysis regarding how they got to that decision. So that is very helpful to us. So we evaluated certain next steps with the wider group of whether an application for rehearing would be advisable. That would be sort of the next step of appealing the decision to try to get this launched. And we determined that that isn't the best approach, that we really need to just start focusing on specific details and specific issues that the commission can fix. And I think that this approach will end up being very successful. One component of the decision, it says that the Energy Division may hold a workshop to address some of these issues. Well, we have been working with Energy Division. We've been talking with a lot of the commission offices, and I think that there is support for at least some action on this workshop front. And once it's discussed in this public forum, then we'll be able to have the opportunity to really parse out what specific proceedings would be good homes for the issues that we raised. And again, we're working on a case-by-case basis. And one thing recently that's happened is in the Energy Resource Recovery Account, or ERA. This is where PG&E tries to project what their energy costs and energy needs are going to be for the coming year. We had listed a lot of issues which PG&E argued are outside of the scope of the proceeding, but we jointly recommended that if it's not in the scope of the proceeding, that it go into the workshop that's made reference to in the decision that came out. So what this means is, since this concept of this workshop is out there, it's actually a good home for us, and MEA and PG&E have jointly sort of pointed to specific cases where review in that forum would be helpful. So I think that there's some good that came of it. It isn't the slam dunk that, of course, I was hoping for, but it's not a win, it's not a loss, it's somewhere in the middle. So, and then we've been involved in the PG&E General Rate Case Phase 1. And we have 3 key issues here. One relates to some return of litigation funds that relate to spent nuclear fuel. I'm not going to quiz you on this later, don't worry.
Beth, can we go back to the earlier one? Taking them up on that offer, I mean, are there specific identifiable kind of case-by-case issues we want to
absolutely.
do right now?
Yes, I think we have identified in ERA specific components, several of them being, for example, our customers pay something called the Competition Transition Charge. I'm just going to give you a miniature history lesson. I promise it's not going to be long. The CTC was something that
I was waiting for the acronym.
There's always an acronym and usually several. So the CTC was something that a charge that the commission came up with in around the 1990, probably 6 era, where the commission decided that they were going to transition from a vertically integrated utility model to a competitive generation model. And the idea was there would be this temporary charge in place for the utilities to basically not suffer or go bankrupt during this transition to a competitive market. So it'd be something to protect them from certain outstanding generation contracts that are out there and certain other costs. And this has sort of decreased over time, but now it's sort of stagnated and it has been outstanding for a very long time. So a couple of questions that we have are, when is this CTC going to end? Since it was supposed to be a temporary charge to protect during this transition period. And also there's sub-issues within there. For example, right now, PG&E is including in this CTC contracts that are terminable by PG&E on 30 days notice. So they're collecting as a stranded cost from our customers, costs from contracts which PG&E has the full right to terminate on 30 days notice. And based on the look on Director Sears' face, she feels about the same way that I do. It really doesn't make sense that we would need to protect the utilities from those types of costs. And so what there needs to be, to date, there has not been a forum to address those, and there's been a reluctance for the commission to really take a look at this. And so these are the types of core, but segmented issues that we're going to be looking at on a case-by-case basis. And if you think about how successful we were in past years when we reevaluated how the PCIA was calculated, breaking out sort of the green component and the brown component, that had a significant impact on the PCIA rate for our customers, that was again more of a technical subset of issues rather than addressing the structural reforms that really do need to happen, but we may as well just work on the subtopics that we can take action on and then hopefully sort of build up to the more comprehensive reforms over time that we'd like to see happen. So hopefully that was not too long of a history lesson, but those are the types of issues that we're going to be bringing up.
Great, thanks.
Duty litigation we already touched on, PPP overhead. I'll talk a bit about this on the next slide, but this is mostly so that you have the acronyms. Sorry, David. And then the third issue that we raised is that PG&E wants to collect what it calls customer retention funds from ratepayers. So this is to prevent customers from leaving PG&E. So we don't particularly approve of that approach, since we believe the shareholders are perfectly well incented to pay for those, as demonstrated in Prop 16 and our own experiences. So just to touch on these, we've had a lot of success so far in the PG Generate Case Phase 1 in segmenting out specific core issues. With regard to these litigation refunds, PG had proposed to return these refunds only to their generation customers. Well, our customers paid the cost of nuclear decommissioning that resulted in this refund. And so we came up with a methodology and jointly developed, after our own testimony, individual testimony, identifying this issue. We came together with joint testimony with PG&E, TURN, and MEA to come up with a solution that fairly returns those funds to our customers. And if I remember, the scale of the litigation is in the hundreds of millions. So, these are significant dollars that are flowing. Not 100% is obviously being returned to our customers, but these are both a victory in the sense that this is a very fair allocation of costs, but also it demonstrates that we're able to work collaboratively with PG&E to come to reasonable results. The next issue relates to public purpose program overheads. So while PPP is a charge collected from all customers, PG&E isn't actually paying for all of its PPP related costs through those funds. They are collecting additional money, and if I recall the numbers, it's around $100 million a year or so, from the distribution rate to basically, they allocate them to the public purpose program charges, and then they charge distribution customers, so our customers included, are paying for PG&E's overhead of their programs. And so I'm not at liberty to talk about the settlement, but a notice of settlement came out that is among PG&E, TURN, and MEA, and we are, assuming all goes to plan, we're happy with the result, and we think that there's going to be progress towards a more fair allocation of costs for customers that that the appropriate customers are bearing overhead costs for energy efficiency programs. And the last item, we have not come to resolution on. PG&E is not inclined to agree that their shareholders or anybody else should pay for their customer retention funds. They would like to be those to be paid for by ratepayers, and so the fight continues in briefing, which is due tomorrow. and through sort of the next steps in the process at the commission. The next item I want to talk to you about is the Energy Savings Performance Incentive, SB. So the chair is now getting a little happy about all of the acronyms that are happening here. So this relates to incentive benefits for investor-owned utilities. And previously this was called the Risk-Reward Incentive Mechanism, and now it's called SB. There wasn't actually a heck of a lot of risk involved with the Risk-Reward Incentive Mechanisms. They just got rid of the risk part. So there's now only upside. So what are the utilities going to get? This was voted on today. The money on the table is $178 million of incentive payments to utilities for running energy efficiency programs. This represents 10.85% of the EE budget. So basically sort of an extra 10% go get them for any energy efficiency programs that they run. So the idea is to encourage investor-owned utilities to run these programs. In other jurisdictions, in other states, the average is around 7%. So California is being more generous than in other states. So the next question is, what do CCAs get? Money on the table? Absolutely nothing. We have been involved in this proceeding, and we asked for incentive payments. And the commission believes that we as a CCA don't require incentives, and that we wouldn't be charged up by having these incentives in place. So they found that this issue was outside of the scope of the proceeding. But what we're really talking about is you think about that $4 million that we received, and you multiply it by the 10%, and that's $400,000 that we could be using for additional energy efficiency programs, that we could be using for local build-outs, that we could be using really to help our customers and really benefit the community. And so we aren't happy with the solution here. On the upside, it's outside of the scope of this proceeding, so it must be in the scope of some other proceeding. So we'll be looking to really encourage the commission to take a look at this and really think through what is appropriate and how do you treat people if you're going to encourage the equal treatment of CCAs and IOUs. How do you come to such disparate conclusions? So we've been involved in this and will be involved in the future. Other regulatory involvement, there is going to be a whole table of acronyms, and each agency loves their own acronyms. So the first one is the California Air Resources Board. We've provided comments on their new AB 32 scoping plan update. Just basically how we're involved there is to ensure that they're acknowledging the importance of CCA and the ability to meet and exceed AB 32 goals. The California Energy Commission, we're providing comments on their IPER, which is a new acronym as well, for the Integrated Energy Policy Report. This is the document that the Public Utilities Commission bases their load forecasts on for system needs. The issue there is that the investor utilities are disinclined to properly back out CCA load forecasts. It ties into stranded costs and not being able to reduce those stranded costs. It's sort of creating inefficiencies in the projections. At the California Independent System Operator, we are involved in 3 components at this time. One relates to a multi-year forward RA. They're working jointly with the Public Utilities Commission on a multi-year capacity framework. Another item is load granularity, which I'm going to spare you today, but I'm sure we'll get into some other day, and congestion revenue rights, which is we receive certain benefits from the system that are calculated by the CAISO, and there are some changes there, so we're monitoring it. I will also spare you the details there. And FERC. So there was actually a technical conference on this multi-year forward proposal, and there are a couple of different items that may end up getting kicked up to FERC. FERC generally is transmission level, so we don't usually have too much involvement there, but in some cases we will have to have a certain level of involvement. So this is really just to inform you that, you know, the Public Utilities Commission isn't the only thing that sort of needs to be monitored, and that our team is, you know, following all of these components, and but it has had an impact on sort of the breadth of tasks that we've been involved in. But that's just sort of a gist of where we're involved in these spots. So, with that, are there questions? Director Sears.
So Deb, I've got it back on the PPP overhead. I just have a process question. You indicated that involves the settlement among PG&E, Turn, and MEA. Do you discuss with our board chair the terms of these settlements before agreeing to enter into these settlements?
We haven't to date, because largely these relate to, this isn't a commitment that MEA is making, but this is how we are involved with PG&E's rate design. So, you know, we are, you know, I'm happy to sort of loop out to board members and discuss these types of settlements, but I think that the types of settlements that you're more familiar with are ones where we, for example, are committed to something. In this case, it obligates PG&E to design their rates in a particular way and to resolve what would otherwise be a litigated issue. And so it's more of a cooperative approach. So I'm happy to bring this to board members, but this is each of these discussions, you know, worked on these with Dawn, and these have sort of been through internal vetting. But I am happy to bring it to you. But once this settlement is released, I can walk through it with you, and you can sort of see the types of things that we're looking at.
Fact, but that would be, I mean, that would be educational. So,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
Obviously, if there was a settlement that did create an obligation for MEA, you would bring it.
Right. Oh, yes, yes.
Checking.
Yeah. I mean, and yes, I mean those types of things. But in this case, okay. Well, I can't talk about settlement. So let's talk about the DOE litigation, which could have just as well been a settlement. The idea there is PG&E was going to allocate certain revenues only to its own generation customers, which would have excluded our customers. And so it's really a PG&E rate design issue. And so in this joint testimony, what we said is a better allocation is by using these other metrics. And so generation customers will receive some of these funds. Distribution customers are going to receive some of these funds, and it's going to be sorted out in a way where it reflects people's contributions over time. But it doesn't obligate MEA in any way. It's just a matter of identifying flaws and issues in the rate design for PG&E and requesting that they make revisions, and that the commission acknowledge that those revisions need to be made for that to be incorporated, for it to become more fair. And so, you know, I can't talk about the other settlement, but the idea is the same, where there's an improper allocation of costs in PG&E's rate design. How do we identify those issues so that they can be addressed by PG&E in their next sort of the current iteration of their rate design proposal.
That was helpful.
So, okay, I hope that, but it's not, you know, a lot of times you think about settlements where it's, you know, make direct payments, or, you know, there's, you know, certain obligations that go along with it. The only obligation that we have is that basically in this general rate case, we'll consider this issue resolved and for the purposes of this proceeding, and then the next general rate case, we will fight many of the same fights again. So that's the gist of settlements. But, and also, you know, you'll hear me use the word litigation. When I use the word litigation, that means litigating before the Public Utilities Commission. And so, considering the number of lawyers that are in this room, you know, don't think that we're going to court on everything. Those obviously rise to board level matters. But when we're talking about, you know, briefing and litigation before the commission, that's sort of an everyday. And it feels sometimes like Groundhog's Day, actually, but it is an everyday kind of occurrence. So, are there other questions that folks have?
Okay, well, thank you, Beth.
Okay.
Great report.
Yes, no? Okay. Oh, yes, thank you. Oh,
do,
good.
actually, I'm just wondering, still winding down to the legislative season, we talked a little bit about this before, but there's at least 2 bills, SB 43 and AB 327, that may have some, that look like they're going to pass and may have some impact on CCA. You want to speak to maybe SB 43 or? Which is the
It's
shared.
not, so the legislative isn't on the agenda.
Oh, is that separate from regulatory?
Yeah, so
Okay.
legislative isn't on the agenda.
Can give you a quick update
What-
after.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Actually, I can make one quick comment, but it actually relates to regulatory, which is that we had requested in PG&E's green option, which does relate to that legislation. San Diego Gas and Electric also has a similar green tariff that they've proposed. MEA filed a motion for consolidation of those proceedings to make sure that the concept of these green options is taken a look at on a comprehensive basis, and that CCA is taken into consideration. And so, you know, the outcome of those, you know, is being informed by the legislative process, which we're watching closely.
I have a question for you, Ben.
Yes.
It's not directly related to all the acronyms that you just educated us about.
Sorry.
I had heard of CAR before, some of those others. So my question is as MC has grown, this program has grown from initial rollout to all of Marin County and now to Richmond, do you see when you speak before the commission or you file your challenges and your quote litigation that more weight is being given because MC has more ratepayers now? Do you see any correlation between size and, because PG&E obviously is the largest OU in the state and probably west of the Mississippi or wherever it is, but it's gigantic, so they get more consideration. Do you see any correlation?
Yeah, there is some correlation insofar as in some meetings that we've had with commissioners, you know, some of them decide how to prioritize issues based on the scale of the issue, and that in some people's mind correlates to the size of the entity. And so we have received that specific feedback that, well, you know, CCA is a pretty small issue in comparison with some larger ones that impact more individuals. So there is a component there. I think that there's been...
So size matters.
Size does matter. I think that, I think it will also help to have additional CCAs participating before the commission. It has certainly helped that we are involved in a lot of proceedings so that more people understand us and understand our objectives. Some people think that we're similar to direct access, but actually there's quite a lot of differentiation between us and direct access just on our business model and our objectives. So, and I think that it has mattered our growth, particularly in Richmond, and serving a broad customer base is very helpful. You know, wide range of commercial, industrial, agricultural, those types of interests. It gives, it provides, since you're representing more types of customers, it's a little bit more familiar to the commission because they're very accustomed to dealing with utilities that have that same type of approach. I don't know. That was a longer answer than I intended, but you know, the size of the entity does matter because it's the number of ratepayers impacted and what is exactly the scale of the problem that you're talking about. Are they going to devote resources and precious bandwidth of the commission to what they consider a small problem and what we consider an enormous problem? So that is, and that is my presentation.
Great, thanks again. Okay, item 14, board member and staff matters. Anything additional? Yes.
I have a question. Considering what was brought up in open session, and not being totally clear on the mission statement of MEA, but do we, whether it's this project or another project like that, do take a stand or not take a stand, or do we have a discussion, and how do we handle that? Because I'm, you know, I've only seen what I've read in the paper, but I was surprised that it didn't go through. I thought it had met many of the concerns. But I'm just wondering, where does MEA stand, and where do we stand within our mission statement when these projects come up, whether it's this project or another one? And can we have that discussion put on the agenda, and is that appropriate?
I mean, that might be something to add to the board retreat agenda. That's if that's a sense of the board. I'm seeing a lot of nods, so Don, why don't we go ahead and do that? Let's add that to the board agenda. Okay, great. Good suggestion. All right, anything else? And just to, Tom, so board retreat is what date again?
25th, September 25th, which is a Wednesday.
Director Butt.
What date?
September 25th.
Okay.
All day. Did you have any other items?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to thank Beth for bringing to our attention AB 628, which was a bill that facilitated the collaboration of utilities and ports for energy efficiency projects. And the way it was initially drafted, CCAs were left out of it. And a bunch of people did a lot of hard work, including our legislators and our lobbyists. And currently, CCAs are in it. There's speculation that I think PG&E wants to get them out of there. So we don't know how it's going to end up, but we'd like to be optimistic.
Yeah, and thanks for your involvement. Appreciate it.
Great, anything further? All right, we're adjourned.